We are back here today with another NBA tier list video. We recently did ranking every point guard for the 2024 season. Today, we're hopping over to shooting guards. Thank you guys for all the support on the tier list for the point guards. You guys actually kind of agreed with most of my rankings. I think there was some debate between like Jalen Brunson and Trae Young, but besides that, I think we were pretty much all on board, which I was kind of surprised. So yeah, today we're doing shooting guards, which is going to be a little bit, I think, more tougher to do. Quick disclaimer, Bradley Beal will not be in here. Devin Booker is. He's played more of his minutes this year at his shooting guard position, so he'll be here for now. But with Bradley Beal coming back, he may be moved over to the point guard position. Bradley Beal has not even played enough this season, so I think it would be unfair to rank him. And if you guys do enjoy these tier list videos, I'd appreciate you dropping a thumbs up. I will leave a link to the shooting guard tier list in the description below. I did create it myself. To make this easier on myself, like for example, Jaylen Brown has played 67% of his minutes at the small forward position this year. So yeah, he'll be in that small forward video. All right, so we will start things off with Alex Caruso. Not the greatest offensive player in the league, but an elite defender. He's probably going to go for at least one first round pick at the trade deadline if Chicago does decide to move on from him. I don't really know where I would rank him so far. I don't know if I'm going to mess up any of these tiers, if I'm going to add a tier, remove a tier, just kind of change the names of them. But for now, just ranking him to everybody else on this list, I'm going to put him in the C tier, but that could obviously change as we go along. His defense, like I said, is elite, and his impact on like a team trying to win a championship would be immenseful, and we'll see if he does end up getting moved. So he could possibly change. Just going to throw him in C for now. Next up, we have Anthony Edwards, who I think is a clear S tier. Not maybe in like the top 5 in MVP voting right now, but could definitely get some top 10 MVP votes by the end of the season. So I think that one is a pretty easy decision to make. Austin Reeves started off struggling this year, has been playing better as of late. I feel like Reeves' offense is very similar to Caruso's defense, but at the end of the day, I do value offense a little bit more. So I don't know where I want to rank Reeves. Like, he may go in the B tier, but then I feel like I should have Caruso there. I don't know. That's tough because Caruso's actually been somewhat efficient this year as well. So maybe I'll have them both in C tier, but if I feel like they belong in B, we'll eventually move it. Bogdan Bogdanovic, who has actually been very good this season. He's been an elite three-point shooter, just an elite jump shooter overall, has been such a big part of this Hawks team this year, and they've dealt with a bunch of injuries. So I think he's in B tier. Didn't realize he's actually scoring 17 points a night on really elite efficiency. He could technically flirt with 50, 40, 90 by the end of the season. Bruce Brown of the Indiana Pacers has been pretty much the good role player that he was in Denver. His three-point shot maybe hasn't been the greatest this year, but he's definitely impacted some wins for Indiana. Next up, we got Caris LeVert, who honestly hasn't been great this year in my opinion. He's been inefficient. Obviously he's putting up a decent amount of points because he's taking a lot of shots. Well, I do feel like he's a tier below these guys, but I think what I might change is I may bump up Caruso into B tier and may bump up Austin Reeves as well. Also, this is just everybody that's played more than 20 minutes a night. If they're averaging less than 20 minutes a night at the moment I'm recording this video, they're not going to be in this tier list. So that was the criteria for just kind of making it here as well. Next up, we have Cason Wallace, who's been a very good defender. He's been efficient though when he's decided to shoot the ball, but he's not really averaging a lot of points. He hasn't really been taking a lot of shots for this OKC Thunder team. I feel like he'd fall in the C tier. I'm debating just because of like the defensive value. I may drop LeVert to D tier, which doesn't mean he's a D tier NBA player. It's just pretty much comparing him to everybody else in this tier list video. Next up, we have Christian Brown, who's just been a good role player this year as well. Also probably going to be another C tier guy. And there it is. I am going to be changing the criteria of this video. So I think Wallace and Brown and Christian Brown are also good role players. I think Caris LeVert, though, you don't really want him starting. I think he's like a good enough like 6th, maybe more 7th and 8th man just as a scorer off the bench. I think Bogey, Caruso, and Reeves are good starters. Obviously, Ant's an all-NBA guy slash MVP candidate. And then we have like all-star, maybe borderline all-star as well into that A tier. So next up, we have D'Anthony Melton, who I think is definitely not an end-of-the-bench guy, but probably closer to like an 8th man than a 6th man, like on a really good team. Obviously, the Sixers don't have like a ton of guard depth, so he's had to start like a plenty amount of games for them this season, but his efficiency at times is not great, but I think he's just like all around like a solid player. You could maybe even throw him in a good role player if you got that efficiency up just a little bit. All right, next up we have DeJounte Murray, who I think is the first guy to go into the A tier. He's a guy that's going to rebound, pass well. He's actually improved, I think, his jumper and his offensive scoring this year, and he's really taken a lot off of like Trae Young's kind of workload at times, because Trae Young has struggled at times or have been injured, and DeJounte Murray has stepped up at times for Atlanta. So Atlanta does have 2 good shooting guards this year with Bogey and DeJounte Murray. Next up, we have Derek White, who honestly I think it's like a perfect player. I think like if you wanted to put him in the B tier, that's fine with me. But I think just how elite he is on the defensive side of the floor, he's not going to shoot you out of games. He takes really only good shots. And also just kind of going back to his defense, he's just everywhere, man. He gets in the passing lanes. He's able to rotate extremely well. I just love like zoning in on Derek White, watching him on defense. And he's going to still score a decent amount of points for you. If you needed him to be like a top 3 option, he could probably get you a sneaky 20, 22 points on a night that you need it. He's efficient as well. I may be glazing Derek White too much, so you can let me know in the comments, but yeah, I'm going to put him in the A tier. Desmond Bane, I'm also going to put in the A tier because the Grizzlies' struggles this year, I don't think are on Bane's fault. He's been asked to do way too much more than he's really ever expected to do since his time in Memphis. He's been the true #1 scoring option, and at times he's had to take way more shots than he's needed to because who else on this team is helping him out scoring? They've relied way too much on guys like Derrick Rose, David Roddy, Santi Aldama, Marcus Smart, like are all solid players, but no #2s because at times Triple J has not been that guy. So I do think Desmond Bane will not be in the All-Star game, but I do think he should be at least in that borderline conversation. Devin Booker, up there, MVP, All-NBA, still one of the better, you could still say the best shooting guard in the NBA, so I'm good with that. Devin Vassell, I think is a good starter. I think he's probably right around that Bogdan Bogdanovic role this season, and obviously the Spurs have not been winning games, so it hasn't translated to that, but I don't think it's his fault. The team isn't very good, and they lack veterans and just overall depth, so I'm cool with him there. I'm debating if I want to throw, I don't know, because like you're still a good starter as a good role player for Caruso and Reeves, so we may adjust that. Donovan Mitchell, right up there. It's still like underrated in my opinion. He's putting up crazy scoring numbers. He's had amazing performances this year, but I feel like he's been talked about a lot less on this Cleveland Cavaliers team, maybe because they haven't been that great to start the year, and last year was when they broke out and everybody was talking about them. So I'm going to throw him in the MVP All-NBA guy. Next up, we have Dante DiVincenzo, who I think is a good role player. He's not going to shoot you out of games. He's going to play good defense. He's going to pass the ball well. He can run in transition. I think he probably shouldn't be a starter unless he's like your last starter. So if you wanted to throw him to 6th to 8th man, I'm fine with that. But I think you're fine with him being like your 4th or 5th scoring option in your starting lineup because he's going to impact the game in a lot of other ways that I think like more like Karis LeVert and DeAnthony Melton can. Next up, we have Eric Gordon, who in my opinion has been a really good role player for them this year. You can even throw him in the good starter if you wanted to, but he's going to be pretty much a 3-point specialist for you, and he's done that for Phoenix, and they've had plenty of injuries this year to Booker and Bradley Beal, and he has stepped up for them as a veteran. All right, next up, we have Gary Harris and Gary Trent Jr. Honestly, we're just looking at this season, basically in a vacuum. I think Gary Trent's been an end-of-the-bench guy. I don't think he's been playing that well for Toronto. You Raptors fans can let me know in the comments if I'm being too harsh on him. But yeah, I don't think he has been great this year. I mean, he could be your 8th man, and I think you're fine with that as well. But I think he's not been great. I think Gary Harris has been, like, obviously impactful on the defensive side of the floor. Maybe if you want to stretch him out to the good role player, that's fine with me. But I think he's more kind of in this tier with Karis LeVert and DeAnthony Melton. I feel kind of harsh putting Gary Trent here, but I do wonder who I have to put in the F tier because we eventually got to put some players there. And that's not been Grayson Allen because he has stepped up like Eric Gordon as an elite 3-point shooter for this Phoenix Suns team in the absence of all their injuries. So honestly, if you wanted to put Gordon and Allen there into good starters, that's fine with me. I think I'm probably glazing Austin Reeves a little bit too much here, so I think I could drop him down to role player. And then obviously Caruso, he's not like an all-around player because he's more impactful on the defensive side of the floor. So I guess the C tier is really going to be kind of the good role player tier because they do something specifically at such a high level. Like for Gordon and Allen, it's 3-point shooting. I think Reeves, it's playmaking and shot creation. Caruso, it's defense. Same with Case and Wallace. I think Brown, DiVincenzo, and Bruce Brown are all guys that are going to do everything well. Maybe not at an elite level, but pretty much they could do anything you want on the offensive and defensive side of the floor. You guys can let me know my criteria in the comments below. I think Emmanuel Quickley has been a good starter. I don't think this is a Knicks bias for me because I do think if he played more minutes, his numbers would be possibly borderline all-star. Like if a team pays him this offseason and plays him 32 to 35 minutes a night, he could be a borderline all-star going forward. He's a great playmaker. He's, I think, one of the more underrated defenders in the league. He's a good 3-point shooter. I may drop him down to good role player, but I think he's having just as good of a season as like a Devin Vassell is because I think Vassell has his lapses on the defensive side of the floor and Quickley does not. Next up, we have Isaiah Joe, who's just been an absolute 3-point shooter. Welcome to the role player tier as your 3-point specialist. Oh man, Jaden Ivey. I hate you, Monty Williams. I hate you. That it's just been such like a smaller sample size for Ivey this year, and he's been struggling as of late. He had a better start. I think he's probably more towards like a 7th or 8th man, comparing him to everybody on this tier list. Yes, he has higher potential than a bunch of guys that we just talked about, but right now this season, I can't see Ivy starting on many teams just because he doesn't really excel at like one specific thing. Like I think at times he's really good at getting to the rim, but he's not like a knockdown shooter. He's not like an elite defender. He's in the worst position and I feel so bad for him. But yeah, I think this season he's a 6th to 8th man. He may be end of the bench because I think we got to put some people there eventually. And it could be Jordan Clarkson. Jordan Clarkson has not been good. He went through that one stretch at like the end of November where he was just on fire. But man, he has not excelled on the Jazz this year. I don't think he would be a starter on many teams in this league, at least that are trying to go for it and at least make the playoffs, because the Jazz have not been good, so they really don't have anybody else to play. Like, I'd rather see Keontae George get more shots a night than Jordan Clarkson. I'm going to throw him in the 6th to 8th man tier, but like I said, we're going to probably have to drop some guys eventually. I think Jordan Hawkins falls into that boat as well. He's a good 3-point shooter, not a good overall shooter. He's a good defender, knows his spots on the floor. I think you'll take him as your 8th man, and shout out to him as a rookie, because like being in this tier as a rookie is like definitely a great sign. So shout out to Casey Wallace as well, being in that C tier. All right, found my first F tier guy. It's Jordan Poole. Not a good defender, not a good shot selection at all. He's been inefficient. The Wizards have stunk, and he's been the top 2 scoring option for them. Maybe I'm being too harsh on Jordan Poole, but I think at times this year he doesn't even look interested on the game that's going on. So I'm gonna throw him in F tier. Some guys may join him. We have Josh Giddey, who this year, I mean, he's still a playmaker, and like obviously there's the whole off the court issues, but I think on the court he's probably like, if you plugged, I mean, he's on a really good team and he is starting, so, but I think if like you had a better scoring option, I think they'd probably move him to the bench. Like, I think if politics weren't in the way and draft capital, since they took him high in 2021, and he's been good the last couple of years, they would start Isaiah Joe, maybe Keeson Wallace at times. But I think like Giddey has been good in his career. He's a good playmaker. He's still young, but man, he has not been a good defender this year, and he's been inefficient. So I'm going to drop him to this D tier. You guys can let me know what you think about him in the comments. I'm sure those will be civil. Man, Josh Green has been disappointing this season. This man got extended. I was so high on him when he came out of Arizona. Had a great end to the Maverick season last year, and I'm like, all right, he could be a starter for Dallas this year. He could be just a 6-man. He has not been good. Dante Exum has been much better than him this year, and I did not expect to say that going into this year. Green is still a solid player. I think he'll turn it around, but I think right now he's probably more towards your like 9th, 10th man in a rotation than he is closer to like a 6-man or a starter. All right, next up we have Josh Okogie, who I'm going to throw at the end of the bench. I think, oh man, like he could be an 8th man just as like a defensive specialist, because his defense is there, but he is not much on the offensive side of the floor. Because he's not even much of a shooter to like save him from being in that F tier. So maybe I'm going to throw him in that F tier, and we're going to start being a little bit more harsh. I think Josh Richardson is a fine enough shooter and defender, and a veteran presence to be there as your 8th man. So yeah, I mean, we're kind of splitting hairs at this point with like Josh Okogie and Josh Richardson. So you guys can let me know that in the comments. All right, next up we have KCP, who is, I think, a good role player, still a good 3-point shooter, good defender, veteran presence. We saw how important he was to Denver's championship run last year. He's continued that veteran play this year. And honestly, though, I'm a big fan of KCP. I'm throwing him in the good starter. Why not? We have Kevin Huerter, who was so bad to start off the year, has been better as of late, still an elite 3-point shooter. So I'm going to plug him there into the good role player just as that 3-point specialist. Kyrie, it sucks that he just got hurt, man. But I think Kyrie, good enough this year. Not the Kyrie we used to see that was maybe like a fringe All-NBA guy. I think he's more in this borderline All-Star tier. I don't know, though. You could throw him into the All-NBA, and I'd be okay with it. You know what? Do I want to give Kyrie his flowers? All right, maybe if we're going to throw one more guy in there, he may be that guy. So we'll see. We got Lonnie Walker, who's been super efficient this year and has been one of the best under-the-radar sightings from last offseason. I'm throwing Lonnie Walker in the good starter. Shout out to him. He's been one of the Brooklyn Nets' better players this season. All right, next up we have Malachi Branham. Definitely ended the bench guy. It pains me to do this because I was a huge fan of him coming out of Ohio State, but he has not been good on one of the worst teams in the league. Yeah, he's an end of the bench guy, but he's still young. We have Malik Beasley, who I kind of want to put in good role player, but I think he's been a really good starter this season. He's been super efficient. He's had his lapses on the defensive side of the floor, but at sometimes he looks really physical over there. I think he's been somewhat similar to KCP, just maybe a little bit less defense. And I'm going to give you props if you're helping these really good teams win. Like, that's what KCP has done for the Denver Nuggets this year. That's what Malik Beasley has done for the Milwaukee Bucks. I don't think the Nets would be around 500 where they are right now without Lonnie Walker. I'm just a big Devin Vassell guy. I've always been, so maybe this is a little bias having him in that B tier. So you guys, I think the biggest debate will be between this probably B, C, and D tier. We got Malik Monk, who I think has been better than Kevin Huerter this year, so I'm going to throw him in that good starter. He's been an elite 3-point shooter. I also could throw him in a good role player, so I don't know. We'll see. I may end up just dropping Lonnie Walker, Beasley, Casey. I don't know. We'll see about that tier. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, I mean, I still like what he can do, and he's been somewhat of a contributor to one of the better teams, the best team in the Western Conference, the Minnesota Timberwolves this year. So I'm going to throw him in that D tier for now. I don't think he's an end of the bench guy. All right, next up we have Norman Powell, who I think is a good enough role player. Still a good shooter, maybe not at times on the defensive side of the floor, but I think he's like a solid guy that you'd want on your team. That like all these guys in these tiers could be starters, and you're okay with it. I think like these are the high-end shooting guard starters that this is like a luxury to have this season only. But yeah, like I said, I may change this around because I feel like I should have Caruso in this tier for his defense. Yeah, that feels a lot better. Ochai Agbaji doesn't really get a lot of shots, but he's efficient, man. I think he'd be perfect in just a higher volume role. I wish I could see a little bit more from him from the Jazz because the Jazz are bad. Let's see more shots for Ochai Agbaji at times. And I'm going to throw him in the 6 to 8 man tier. I'm not really ranking the guys in the tier at all. Quentin Grimes. All right. Good 3-point shooter. Doesn't shoot the ball a lot. Recently got benched for Dante DiVincenzo in the Knicks starting lineup, but is still a good defender. So I think he'd be like even an 8th man on a really good team. I think he'd still be like a high trade value asset at the deadline if the Knicks went out and traded him for like a Caruso or DeRozan. I know that's been kind of flown around out there. So I'm going to still say 6 to 8 man tier. RJ Barrett is a tough guy to rank. Do I think Quickly's been better than RJ this year? I don't know, man. RJ's, oh man, it's been so frustrating. He had a good game against the Raptors the other night, but I was so close to tweeting out like I'm done with him because he's been on a rough stretch. But I feel like RJ Barrett isn't a good role player. Like he doesn't really move the needle in one specific aspect of the game. Like he's not an elite defender. He's not an elite shot creator or 3-point shooter. He can get to the rim so easily, but he is so bad at finishing at the rim, blows so many layups. So I'm going to put him in like the good role player because he's just like mid in everything. I don't know. You could also say he's a 6th man, but that's just kind of weird to say about RJ Barrett. You guys can let me know that one in the comments. Next up, we have Scotty Barnes, and this caught me by surprise, but yeah, according to Basketball Reference, he's played 58% of his minutes this year at the shooting guard position, so we're ranking him here. I mean, the Raptors roll some insanely tall lineups out there at times, and like OG will be in the small forward spot, but yeah, he's been a all-star this year. He's been just as good as all these guys here. If I had to rank them, I mean, what Derek White does, maybe more than Desmond Bane, I think I would probably go Kyrie, Barnes, Murray, White, Bane. You could even put Barnes in front of Kyrie, but I don't think he's really in that MVP All-NBA tier. Shaedon Sharpe has been on a tear as of late, and I'm a big Shaedon Sharpe fan. I think he's in the good starter tier. I don't think he's been good enough where he's like been an all-star yet, but he's 20 years old, so just being in this good starter tier is huge for him. This year, Terrence Mann's probably been like an end of the bench 6 to 8 man this year, so I think if I'm gonna put like Josh Green and Josh Okogie in this end of the bench tier, I think I'm gonna do the same with Terrence Mann. Zach LaVine is right there. I don't know how to rank him with RJ Barrett. I still feel like you're happy with LaVine as your starter, so I think I'm going to throw him and Barrett up there in the good starter tiers. I think if I were going to drop anybody from this good starter tier, like I'm finalizing this, I think this is the clear-cut S tier. I think this is the clear-cut A tier. I'm not debating anybody from B tier going up. It's just B tier going down. I think I could be really high on guys like Malik Beasley, Lonnie Walker, and maybe Emmanuel Quickly and Zach LaVine. Like LaVine, has he been a good starter? He's getting paid like one, but I don't know. At times this year, I don't know if he belongs in this tier, but it's like weird as a good role player tier. So I'm deciding to drop Malik Beasley a tier, and I've added the mid tier because I don't know where to rank RJ Barrett and Zach LaVine in this tier, which you guys can let me know in the comments. But yeah, this is pretty much going to be my tier list. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you're going to comment about like Beasley or really anybody in C and B tier, how they could be interchangeable, I'm fine with that. That one was definitely the toughest tiers to rank. But for D tier, I think you guys can also probably come up with some good debates. Like, let me know about Josh Giddey, what he's done this year. Let me know about guys like Jaden Ivey, Jordan Hawkins, Jordan Clarkson. Am I too harsh on anybody in the F tier? But yeah, I hope you guys did enjoy this shooting guard tier list. Drop a thumbs up if you did. I'm not sure if small forwards will come out next, or maybe I'll do an updated rankings of the NBA teams or just rookies this season. So yeah, I hope you guys did enjoy the video. Drop a like if you did, and I'll catch you all on the next one. Peace.